This is the Art of Darkness podcast with Kevin Kautzman.
And Brad Kelly. We're a couple of very online writers interested in the dark side of what drives creative people to create against all odds.
This show is about art and the people who make it, what it costs them, and what it takes to bring something unique and impactful into the world.
Each episode, we excavate the life and work of an artist you might think you know.
Don't worry, they're all safely dead.
On every episode, we try and find out just what the hell was wrong with them and how they worked through their darkness to create something that lives on after them and continues to move culture.
Find us online at artofdarkpod.com and on Twitter at artofdarkpod. And of course, she's the youngest daughter, and there are three older boys in a man's world. Okay, so getting a little bit of her psychology. This early experience of fighting to have her voice heard shaped Ursula's development as a writer, especially in her creation of strong, independent characters who often navigated complex social dynamics. The philosophical debates in the Kraber household also inspired her belief that stories were not just entertainment, but vital tools for understanding the world. This is very much like what you were saying, Brad. You would co-sign that, I think.
Yeah.
Growing up in such a rich intellectual environment, Le Guin developed a deep respect for storytelling and mythology. Once I learned to read, I read everything. I read all the famous fantasies, Alice in Wonderland and Wind in the Willows and Kipling. I adored Kipling's Jungle Book. And then when I got older, I found Lord Dunsany. He opened up a whole new world, the world of pure fantasy. And Worm Ouroboros, again, pure fantasy. Very, very fattening. Lord Dunsany was an Anglo-Irish writer. He was a baron, commonly known as Lord Dunsany. He published more than 90 books during his lifetime. Best known are The King of Elfland's Daughter and his first book, The Gods of Pegana. Are you familiar with this guy?
Yeah, a little bit. I've never read any. Actually, if you go back to our H.P. Lovecraft episode, he was our friend Ben Thomas talks about Lord Dunsany a bit, and H.P. Lovecraft was a devotee. Actually, H.P. Lovecraft, one of the few times he left Providence in like the first couple acts of his life was to go see Lord Dunsany.
Nice. See, it's all coming together on Art of Darkness, the podcast about the dark side of creativity. All right. So yeah, she was really getting into it. Pure fantasy, very, very fattening. And then my brother and I blundered into science fiction when I was 11 or 12, early Asimov, things like that. But that didn't have too much effect on me. It wasn't until I came back to science fiction and discovered Sturgeon, but particularly Cordwainer Smith. I read the story Alpha Ralpha Boulevard, and it just made me go, wow, this stuff is so beautiful and so strange. And I want to do something like that. Are you familiar with this author, Cordwainer?
No, never even heard that name. Sturgeon is sort of on my radar, but this other person, I have no idea.
Yeah. So, oh wow, I've got it right here. Alpha Ralpha Boulevard by Cordwainer Smith, a pseudonym for Paul Myron Anthony Linebarger, first published in the Magazine of Fantasy and Science Fiction, June 1961. Brad, I'm going to pull up a bio of this guy. I'm going to send you a link. I want you to read the first few paras of this because I think this is a good little detour.
Sure, yeah. So let's see. Cool. Oh, go ahead.
I just sent it to you.
Yeah, I got it. Okay.
Yeah. So let me introduce this guy. Right, Paul Myron Anthony Linebarger, better known in his pen name, Cordwainer Smith, was an American author known for his science fiction works. Linebarger was a U.S. Army officer, a noted East Asia scholar, and an expert in psychological warfare.
Oh,
let's go. Tunnels. We're going down the tunnels.
Nice.
That's awesome.
Nice.
Although his career as a writer was shortened by his death at the age of 53, he is considered one of science fiction's more talented and influential authors. All right, read us just a few paras at the beginning of this.
Of this link you sent. So I've got Alpha Ralpha Boulevard. Hold on, give me 1 second.
It's right there. It's right there. Here, I'll send it to you right here, Brad. I just sent it to you. Oh, it's too many characters. You can find it. It's right there in the. You got to click here, I'll
Yep.
send you the
One of the PDF
HTML.
links.
Here,
I
right here.
got it.
You got it.
Ah.
Click on that. I can read it too.
Hold
You want me to do it?
on. Hold on. I don't know
You
why
got
it's
it, Brad.
doing.
You got it.
Uh, uh,
What is going on?
it's trying to link. There we go. I got it. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
Alpha Ralpha Boulevard. We were with happiness in those early years. Everybody was, especially the young people. These were the first years of the rediscovery of man, when the instrumentality dug deep in the treasury, reconstructing the old cultures, the old languages, and even the old troubles. The nightmare of perfection had taken our forefathers to the edge of suicide. That's a good start. Now, under the leadership of the Lord Gestocost and the Lady Alice More, the ancient civilizations were rising like great landmasses out of the sea of the past. I myself was the first man to put a postage stamp on a letter after 14,000 years. I took Virginia to hear the first piano recital. We watched at the eye machine when cholera was released in Tasmania, and we saw the Tasmanians dancing in the streets now that they did not have to be protected anymore. Everywhere, things became exciting. Everywhere, men and women worked with a wild will to build a more imperfect world. I myself went into a hospital and came out French. Of course, I remembered my early life. I remembered it, but it did not matter. Virginia was French too, and we had the years of our future lying ahead of us like ripe fruit hanging in an orchard of perpetual summers. We had no idea when we would die. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
That's pretty
Yeah, there's
engaging.
some stuff going on. Yeah, and she's so
Yeah,
this hits her if it came out in 1961, she would be uh how old would she be? 29 to
well, she'd be
61.
32, right?
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, maybe it was released earlier, but in any case,
Yeah, yeah,
um, so she's reading this and going, "Wow, awesome. I want to do this." Okay.
right on.
Having a little psychological warfare dropped on her head. Uh, so I think we could see how this appreciation for literature and her parents' background as anthropologists creates this unique
Oh,
stew.
that's like that first couple paragraphs of that Alpha Ralpha Boulevard was definitely like thought experiment anthropology, right?
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and Alpha Ralpha Boulevard has its own entire Wikipedia story,
Mm, right
article
on.
if you want to read more about
Yeah.
that. Um, Maybe a future subject we do, a little
Yeah.
more obscure kind of guy.
Yeah.
Although it sounds like in science fiction circles, he's well known.
Yeah.
Le Guin's connection to Oregon became an essential part of her identity. Her ancestors were among the first white settlers in Eastern Oregon, and she frequently referenced this historical link. As she told writer Julie Phillips, my great grandfather drove 350 head of cattle through Nevada to settle on Steens Mountain in 1873. This sense of history, combined with the vast open landscape of the Oregon high desert, profoundly shaped Le Guin's imagination. Who else? What other science fiction writer that we've covered has a real Oregon connection? Pretty sure it's Mr. Frank Herbert. It looks like Brad stepped up for a minute here, but I'm gonna pick his brain about Herbert when he comes back. All right. The quiet, desolate expanses of Eastern Oregon became a backdrop for much of Le Guin's writing. In her poem, A Meditation in the Desert, she wrote about stones that seemed to be full of slower, longer thoughts than mind can have. The metaphor of the desert, a place of introspection and vastness, appeared in much of her fiction, providing a sense of isolation, introspection, and timelessness that became characteristic of her literary worlds. She would eventually live in Oregon. Her home in Oregon was not only a personal retreat, but also a source of creative balance. And we'll get to her relationship and eventually her settling in Oregon here in a bit. But Le Guin attended Berkeley High School, where her love for literature deepened. She graduated in 1947 and pursued studies in Renaissance French and Italian literature at Radcliffe College, Harvard. Believe Radcliffe was the women's college at Harvard. And now it's just part of it was a women's liberal arts college in Cambridge that was founded in 1879. In 1999, it was fully incorporated into Harvard College. All right. It was one of the seven sisters. So uh no slouch here. Our
Yeah, for
friend
sure.
Le Guin. Yeah, one of the smarter people we've covered. She got her BA in 1959, studying languages, French and Italian literature,
Hmm.
Renaissance French and Italian literature. She
Wow.
must have
Okay.
had opinions on Dante. Um,
Hmm.
from there, she continued at Columbia University, receiving a master's degree in French in 1952. During this period, Le Guin won a Fulbright fellowship, which allowed her to study in France. This time in Europe marked a turning point in both her personal life and her writing. In France, Le Guin met her future husband, Charles Le Guin, a historian.
Hmm.
They bonded over their shared love of literature and humor and were engaged within weeks of meeting. That's the only way to do it. That's the Forget about this moving in together, meeting the parents. Now go win a prestigious fellowship and
Hmm.
crawl in bed together and get engaged immediately.
No, why not? I mean,
Right?
what are we doing here? Yeah.
How much time do you have on this earth,
Yeah.
people?
Yeah. Exactly.
Well, anyway, really, actually, do it your own way. You'll be happier. Um,
Mm.
their marriage marked the beginning of a partnership that would see Charles as Ursula's first reader and her staunch supporter throughout her career. Um, Le Guin's upbringing under the intellectual giants of her parents shaped her voice. Her father's anthropological work influenced her portrayal of complex cultural systems in her writing, and her mother's ability to humanize the marginalized informed the depth of her characters. Her ambition, as she once said, was not just trying to get into other minds, but other beings. A goal that
Mm.
defined her writing and set her apart as both a writer of fantasy and a humanistic storyteller. There is a reading the left hand of darkness. There is a sense of totality or comprehensiveness to the writing where it's fully believable. It
Oh yeah.
like in an emotionally resonant way. It isn't cold at
Hmm.
all. It's very
Hmm.
you feel the narrator is there somehow.
Yeah, I've honestly taken a fair amount of inspiration from that book for that very purpose. Like you can write genre that doesn't just feel like an encyclopedia entry on the world that the genre takes place in, right? Like it can actually be like feel as though it's hyper real at the same time. Yeah.
Absolutely. Uh, so a little more here about her work, and then we're going to keep going in the biography. Um, in her exploration of different worlds, whether the Hainish cycle, the anarchist utopia of the dispossessed, or the gender fluid society of the left hand of darkness, she consistently challenged readers to rethink their perceptions of culture, gender, and identity. And that's such a valuable service, right? This is a thing that fiction can do. This is a thing that the novel can do. It can remind us that our own lives here are our own social lives are constructed and are arbitrary, and they can change.
Hmm.
Culture changes. Culture is alive. What's fashionable this year or what's done this year may not be done in 10 years, 50 years. Um, makes you think about why things are the way they are now. There's a
Hmm.
service to that. And even beyond, let's say, uh, like, how to say this, even beyond politically trying to subvert the status quo, even if you admire elements of the status quo, it's worth thinking about why we do things the way that we do them.
Yeah,
Um,
100%. Yeah.
yeah. Uh, as Le Guin explained, imagination, working at full strength, can shake us out of our fatal, adoring self absorption and make us look up and see with terror or with relief that the world does not, in fact, belong to us at all. Quite like that.
Yeah.
Um, so moving into kind of act two of her life, right? We have a vision of her childhood, precocious, a genius, coming from a family of geniuses, or of at least brilliant people, hanging out with Oppenheimer, right? You know,
I wonder if
uh,
Dinner with Oppenheimer, if he was just staring off into space like
sure,
Cillian Murphy in the
yeah,
movie.
sure,
Yeah.
sure. Just wishing they had dropped the bombs on the Krauts.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
that was that's really what he had. hoped for.
Well, I guess this would have been pre that though, right? I
Right,
mean,
right.
when Ursula was hanging
Uh,
out with him.
yeah, okay. All
Yeah.
right. Yeah. Um, did you like that movie? I I
Is
wasn't that
overrated. I
overrated.
mean,
I was not that into it. I
it's
was
not
not
that it
impressed.
wasn't I didn't think it was bad. It was watchable. Um,
I
but
can't believe
yeah,
that it
it
grossed $1 billion. It doesn't
doesn't make
make sense
no,
to
it
me.
doesn't
I
make
don't.
sense. No.
It's very
Yeah.
goofy. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I just kept. I walked out of it and went over to Dune 2.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was just like,
Hey,
I did sit through it once, but I went back. I'm like, what did I miss? And then, no, it's just not.
yeah, it's just
I
not
don't.
quite.
I
I don't
just
know.
don't. Yeah.
I
Anyway,
wasn't super into it.
it felt. I don't know. It felt self-important.
Well,
In
it
any
felt like
case,
one of those movies that everyone was like they capital T were telling you was important. You're like, well,
hmm
is it?
yeah. Is it?
I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
While traveling to France aboard the Queen Mary in 1953, Ursula met historian Charles Le Guin. They married later that year in Paris. Boom. A
Yeah.
union that would
Nice.
last for over 6 decades.
Hell yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Reflecting on her time, on this time in her life, Le Guin once said, "When I married Charles, I knew that I could not do everything at once. I couldn't be a perfect wife, mother, and scholar, so I let go of academia to pursue my writing." So, okay.
Mhm.
Uh, and let's see here. There's a quote. Yeah, I think she maybe said to him, "All this is completely contingent upon the fact that we brought up the kids together." So they actually worked together on the child rearing. And I think I have more from the last interview on this. All right. Remember we were talking about her work-life balance, right?
Yeah.
Her writing career and her 3 children. Here's Le Guin responding to, "How did you and your husband share this work of child rearing?" Le Guin: "That was really the secret, that I had this guy who could do his job and let me do my job. And then we did our job together, which was to bring up the kids. And keeping a house like my mother, I enjoy it. I don't think I kept the house very well, but I could keep things going and write." And so when your children were small, would you write at night? Le Guin: "Yeah, that's kind of all you can do. If you're home with the kids, you've got to be on duty unless you have servants or something." Huber: "I want to ask you about a particular poem in Finding My Elegy, Song for a Daughter. It begins, 'Mother of my granddaughter, listen to my song. A mother can't do right, a daughter can't be wrong.'" Could you
Ooh.
just tell me about what inspired that poem? What's going on in that poem? Well, when your daughter has a daughter and her daughter's giving her trouble, you think, oh boy, it's a wheel going around. And the way you feel about an angry 4 year old, you want to wring their neck and you love them very much. And just kind of watching the generations repeat the pain and the love that we give each other, and the fact that the kid can never do anything right and they also never can do anything wrong. That's the way it came out of my head. So that is a grandmother poem. It's got 3 generations going. And of course, it involves my mother and how I'm sure she felt sometimes that I never could do anything right. But she never said so. She let me feel that I was doing okay. All right.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, interesting. Very
Mhm.
meditative.
Mhm.
Let's see here. I want to keep moving here. Yeah. So, let's see. The couple settled in Portland, Oregon, where Charles took a position at Portland State University. During the early years of their marriage, Le Guin focused on raising their 3 children, Elizabeth, Carolyn, and Theodore. Though these responsibilities kept her busy, she continued to write in her spare time, laying the foundation for her future success. Well, you were stood up, Brad. Did you hear me talk about Oregon and the
Yeah.
influence of Oregon? Yeah, and wasn't Herbert deeply
Frank
influenced?
Herbert,
Mhm.
he was more of he was born in Washington State, which,
Okay.
they're culturally very similar to Oregon for sure. And they may have lived in Oregon for a time when he
Hmm.
was an adult. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I knew it was like Pacific Northwest. All right.
Mhm.
A little bit about their life in Oregon. Their home in Oregon was not only a personal retreat, but a source of balance. She and her husband often retreated to their home on Steens Mountain. There, they engaged in simple rituals, reading to each other and having a drink before dinner. That sounds nice.
That's that.
Uh, yeah, Steens Mountain is a mountain in Oregon, if you want to look it up. I'm looking at it right now. It looks very remote,
Steens. Steens Mountain.
remote in the south eastern part of Oregon. So just like out
Oh,
there,
yeah,
practically in Nevada,
yeah,
part of a world you don't really think much about,
yeah.
to be frank. So okay, cool. Um, and so here's what she said. An artist can go off into the private world they create and maybe not be so good at finding the way out again. This could be one reason I've always been grateful for having a family and doing housework and the stupid, ordinary stuff that has to be done. So this is not she didn't give up her life,
Right.
you know, as a mother and a family, person in a family. Um, I've got a little bit here about when she met, when Ursula Kraber met and fell in love with Charles. Here's what she
Just looking
said.
at Steens Mountain over here. It's
Yeah,
ooh.
Brad's ready. Brad's ready to go.
Oh man, it's not too far. I still, I lived in Boise, Idaho for a while, which isn't that far from there, really.
It
Yeah,
looks beautiful, doesn't it? It
love it.
looks just
Yeah.
almost otherworldly.
Hmm.
Yeah. So okay, this is about her meeting her husband. Obviously, this sort of thing doesn't happen. She wrote him 6 weeks after they met. I mean, conceivably, you might exist, but you would never sit at table 30 at second sitting for dinner in tourist class in the Queen Mary on September 23rd, 1953. I ask you, now would you? Charles felt the same, though he didn't recognize true love quite as quickly as she. She fell in love right away.
Aw,
I thought she was awfully snooty and shy the first meals. Yeah, snooty is a word for Ursula K. Le Guin. I'm gonna,
sure.
she's not perfect. Like none
Right.
of our subjects are perfect. I'm not perfect. You're not
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah.
If anything, it's like okay. And she thought I should win the National Book Award. You know what I mean? Like, why
I
not
mean,
me? Yeah. And she thought that I was British and very reserved. Oh, she thought that you were British.
ew,
Oof. But
ew.
after those, we love our British friends. But after those first misapprehensions were displaced, we have scarcely been apart at all the last month, he wrote his parents. How do I tell you all this without it seeming silly or impossible? It is neither. Not impossible because it has happened, not silly because it is too deep and too wonderful. Ursula and I are going to be married. They were too practical to use words like fate, but Ursula wrote home, we both think, and we are awfully intelligent people, that we have found something truly large and solid. I mean, it doesn't take 3 weeks to see the Rock of Gibraltar, sort of. Even if it turned out to be a magnificent pebble, we would have only lovely remembrances. Paris is such a nice city to walk arm in arm in, but I don't think it will. Charles was, she added, sometimes a little cracked and a gentleman and a very, very good man. They're just like
Mhm.
pumping each other up to get married. He was like
Yeah.
Ursula, romantic and pragmatic, funny and serious. He was a historian, loved literature, and was as delighted as she was by the pleasures of Paris and later Portland, Oregon. He was
Mm.
affectionate and easygoing, where she could be argumentative and a worrier. They both came from close, warm families, and Ursula began fantasizing about the family they would start together. Oh, what a bourgeoisie you found in yourself, my dear, she wrote. But what a fire and force of love there's going to be in our bourgeois existence. It would suffice for a dozen proletarians and aristos. It would. That's you on Twitter, Brad.
Right.
Yeah. True. We are so painfully middle class. It's so painful. God.
I'm fine with it. I've
Yeah, dude.
accepted it.
Yeah. Like, well, yeah. We very easily could not be. We very easily could be. Uh,
The below
yeah,
that. Yeah.
yeah, indeed. Yeah, it just takes one bad night, one
Yeah.
wrong turn down there in Austin, and it could have gone a completely different
Yeah.
direction. Yeah.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah. Eventually, they cared for their three children together so that Ursula was able to keep family and writing in balance. It wasn't always idyllic, and there were gains and losses over time, but they loyally supported each other's careers. They were the first readers for each other's work, and he learned not to distract her when she was writing. So,
Hmm.
um, To her parents, she explained that it was actually a picture of the Revolution 1830 in progress, but expression on my face is because I had just seen the camera on my sneaking low-down husband's hands. She's talking about a picture that was taken of her. Um,
Mm.
and she was about to shout "Avant" and throw an inkwell at him. The journey, or here's a great quote from Le Guin. True journey is return, Ursula wrote in one of her most often quoted lines. For her,
Mm.
return meant partly family, partnership, the place and people she came back to when she was done inventing worlds. She could be most herself when she was with him, she wrote Charles, and that, she explained, was what she meant by coming home. Okay. So listen, we
Right.
haven't had a lot of true love on the pod, have
No,
we?
no, this
Right?
is nice. This is
Yeah,
nice.
it's
Yeah.
this is what we wanted to do her because she's really really important. I can't even remember why did Ursula K. Le Guin land on my desk. I think because we wanted
I'm
to
not
include her
sure.
in the book club. Well, anyway,
Maybe. Yeah.
I'm glad we did it. Art of Darkness, there's plenty of darkness. Like her relationship with her mother was a little uneven, a little unusual. You have this business with Ishi kind of
Hmm.
lurking in the background, and her desire to craft novels that sort of give the other their just due.
Hmm.
It's all sort of like lurking there, but like on balance, yeah, no, she's not like Kubrick. She's never going to torture her actors on set. She's
Right.
not like Burroughs. She actually met a guy, like fell in love in Paris and had a 60-year marriage that produced three children who were
It's
well
beautiful.
loved. It's like you can. So you're telling me this can be done? You can do this,
Yeah.
and you could be a
But also you
finalist.
can hang on
Yeah.
to, yeah, you can hang on to bitter resentments for not getting, like,
Right.
the top literary award in the
Right.
world. Yeah.
For not beating Don DeLillo
Right. Right.
for a national book award.
Yeah.
Um she would have a lot of righteous anger. There's even a point which we'll come to later in the story where she calls out Amazon for its publishing practices.
Oh,
Early.
interesting. Okay.
Early.
Huh.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she was a real anarchist. She had a real legitimate kind of slice of anarchism in her. I mean,
I like it.
I would say a real anarchist. Like it's hard to practice anarchism in
Sure.
but I mean you can have a sensibility that's informed by it, right?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
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 Okay, so they're in Oregon, they have three children, and her first professional publication came in 1962 with her and she
Okay.
had a lot of rejection. She'd been writing poetry, turns her attention to science fiction. 1962, she has a short story, April in Paris, which appeared in Fantastic Magazine. The science fiction community largely ignored. I think if you wanted to create a magazine like that again, you could do it. You could do it. People
Yeah.
would, yeah. It's just so much work, right?
Hmm. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's so much work to do this. I have April in Paris. I'm going to send you the link, Brad.
Oh, okay.
If you want to read a little bit of that on the fly here, maybe the first
Yep.
couple of Paris, so we can see her first published. Um, so yeah, the science fiction community largely ignored her early works, but Le Guin remained undeterred, continuing to develop her distinctive voice. By the mid 1960s, she had several completed unpublished novels and was beginning to work on what would become her Hainish cycle, a series of interconnected novels set in a shared universe. Read April in Paris,
Yeah.
Brad.
Yeah. Quote, Professor Barry Pennywither sat in a cold, shadowy garret and stared at the table in front of him, on which lay a book and a bread crust. The bread had been his dinner, the book had been his life work. Both were dry. Dr. Pennywither sighed and then shivered. Though the lower floor apartments of the old house were quite elegant, the heat was turned off on April 1st, come what may. It was now April 2nd and sleeting. If Dr. Pennywither raised his head a little, he could see from his window the two square towers of Notre Dame de Paris, vague and soaring in the dusk, almost near enough to touch. For the island of St. Louis, where he lived, is like a little barge being towed downstream behind the island of the city where Notre Dame stands. But he did not raise his head. He was too cold. The great tower sank into darkness. Dr. Pennywither sank into gloom. He stared with loathing at his book. It had won him a year in Paris, publish or perish, said the dean of faculties, and he had published and been rewarded with a year's leave from teaching without pay. Munson College could not afford to pay unteaching teachers. So, on his scraped up savings, he had come back to Paris to live again as a student in a garret, to read 15th century manuscripts at the library, to see the chestnuts flower along the avenues. But it hadn't worked. He was 40, too old for lonely garrets. The sleet would blight the budding chestnut flowers, and he was sick of his work. Who cared about his theory, the Pennywither theory, concerning the mysterious disappearance of the poet Francois Villon in 1463? Nobody. For after all, his theory about poor Villon, the greatest juvenile delinquent of all time, was only a theory and could never be proved, not across the gulf of 500 years. Nothing could be proved. Okay. So yeah, all right. It's good. It's intriguing. I kind of want to know more about this theory and this poet. And
coming out slick and heat. Not bad. You can see why it got published. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So we're going to get into the Hainish cycle and now having some early success. So her breakthrough came with the publish of Rokanan's World in 1966, the first novel in the Hainish cycle. Set in a universe where a common ancestry links various human civilizations, Rokanan's World introduced readers to the themes of cultural contact and anthropological exploration that would recur throughout her work. So, just real quick off Wikipedia. Oh, the cover's so cool. The cover of the first edition. Look it up, Brett.
Yeah, I'm looking at it now. It's
dude. Yeah. Wherever he went, his super science made him a legendary figure. Rokanan's World, Ursula K. Guin, and it's like this, almost like a child's drawing of like a dragon wearing. It's awesome, awesome. Yeah. This was her debut. It was published in 1966 as an ace double, along with Avram Davidson's The Karchi Reign, following the Tet Besh format. What is that? Tet Besh? Oh, back to back. So it was published where one, look it up. Look this up. It's so Stephanie Leahy would have a lot to say about this. It's published like where it's not you got to flip the book around
and it's not just like it's not just two volumes in one, you keep flipping through them. It's like the back of one, it's like the back of two books are bound together, basically.
Listen to this though. The story itself has many elements of heroic fantasy. It's in the Hainish cycle. The hero Gavril Rokanan encounters lords who live in castles and wield swords and make podcasts, and other races much like fairies and gnomes in his travels on a backward planet. The word ansible for a faster-than-light communicator was coined in the novel. The term has since been widely used in science fiction.
I've heard of that.
So she invented this idea of the ansible. It's a category of fictional devices or technology capable of near instantaneous or faster-than-light communication. It can send and receive messages to and from a corresponding device over any distance or obstacle whatsoever with no delay, even between star systems. As a name for such a device, the word ansible first appeared in the 1966 novel, we were talking about, by K. Guin. Since that time, the term has been broadly used in the works of numerous science fiction authors across a variety of settings and continuities. There you go. Super cool.
Cool.
Yeah, I mean, so she's already like contributing to the very fabric of science fiction, of what's possible in science fiction through the creation of this concept. All right. Okay. Cool. So the novel was followed by Planet of Exile and City of Illusions, 66, 67. So now the seal's open, right? We're selling books. Both of which expanded on the philosophical and political complexity of the Hainish universe. These early works were not immediate bestsellers, but they attracted critical attention for their sophisticated exploration of social and political issues. Her background in anthropology, coupled with her fascination with Taoism and Jungian psychology, gave her stories a depth that set them apart from much of the science fiction being published at the time. I think she would say that she came to Jung later and was like, oh, that's what I've been doing.
Right.
Like, it wasn't like she read Jung and was like, oh, I'm going to do that. It's more like, oh, I see. Yeah. The Hainish novels laid the groundwork for what would become some of her most celebrated works. In 1968, so the Beatles are on the scene, the world's undergoing revolution, what, Vietnam, all that. Um, Vietnam was kicked off by 1968, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, of course. I mean, we were well into it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Uh, she published A Wizard of Earthsea, the first novel in what would become the Earthsea series. Although it was initially marketed as a YA fantasy novel, A Wizard of Earthsea transcended age and genre, earning a widespread acclaim for its rich world building and thoughtful exploration of moral and philosophical themes. The novel introduces readers to Ged, a young boy with innate magical abilities, sound familiar, who embarks on a journey of self-discovery and grapples with the consequences of his power. Brad, were you able to find a PDF of this? Because I think this is
Yeah,
the
I
one that,
do. Yep,
yeah,
yep. I'm just
give us a little read of Earthsea here so we can get a sense of what she's doing in it.
yeah, let me see. I've got it
And
on just
while you
clicking
do
in.
that, do you? I've been going for about 2 hours now, and just can you read a page or two? I'm gonna go fix myself another coffee as you do. Just let me know when
Okay.
you have it
Yep.
ready, and I hope you're enjoying this so far. Maybe before
Yep.
we do, can we? Maybe before you get into it, can we check in on where you're at with Ursula, Brad? I like to do that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I didn't know anything about her background, as I said, so I mean, I'm interested in obviously this Ishi story and her parents and all of that, but I am once again fascinated by, I think from this whole notion that genre fiction is something of a ghetto. I mean, there is truth to that, and we see that even now in some of the, like the self-published worlds, how kind of chintzy some of that stuff is. But then you see when you get to these figures who are like luminaries in the genre, like Ursula Le Guin, you realize like, oh, she's as smart and educated as anybody. She's not fooling around. And you mentioned a bit where she sort of gave up on academia. It's like she would have been wasted as a scholar, her gifts. Not that she couldn't have contributed something, but like, would you rather have somebody who wrote like another couple monographs on whatever, or somebody who wrote the Earthsea and the Hainish cycle stuff, right? So it's cool watching her kind of come to this. And also the fact that I appreciate the fact that her literary success didn't come early. She's not like somebody who she's 23 years old and she writes a bestseller. Like this stuff it's kind of a long time coming, right? 1968 is when her biggest book comes out. I mean, she's coming on 40 years old at that point. So she's not, she's no spring chicken, which is kind
Yeah,
of
and
cool to see.
she took her time to have her children. And
Yeah.
children, it gets easier as they get older. You have a
Hmm.
different set of problems when they're teenagers. You have a different set of problems when they're 8, 9, 10. But at a certain point they go to school, they become
Hmm.
little people. You know,
Yeah.
you put them on a bus or you drop them off at school, you start having some time, more time.
Yeah.
Mom has
Yeah.
more time, dad has more time.
Hmm.
And it is what it is. So hey, can
Yeah.
you let me go make myself a coffee? Will you read
Yep.
from the
Yep. I've
A
got it
Wizard of
here.
Sea? Okay, let's
Yep.
go.
I got it here. So it's just starting at the beginning. We'll read a little while and it's Brad's story time here. Chapter 1 is called Warriors in the Mist. The island of Gaunt, a single mountain that lifts its peak a mile above the storm-racked northeast sea, is a land famous for wizards. From the towns and the high valleys and the ports on its dark, narrow bays, many a Gauntishman has gone forth to serve the lords of the archipelago in their cities as as wizard or mage, or looking for adventure to wander working magic from isle to isle of all Earth Sea. Of these, some say the greatest, and surely the greatest voyager, was the man called Sparrowhawk, who in his day became both Dragon Lord and Archmage. His life is told of in the Deed of Ged, and in many songs, but this is a tale of the time before his fame, before the songs were made. He was born in a lonely village called Ten Alders, high on the mountain at the head of the northward vale. Below the village, the pastures and plowlands of the vale slope downward, level below level, towards the sea, and other towns lie in the bends of the river Ar. Above the village, only forest rises, ridge behind ridge, to the stone and snow of the heights. I think she's pulling from Steen Mountain here a little bit. Continuing on. The name he bore as a child, Dunny, was given him by his mother, and that and his life were all she could give him, for she died before he was a year old. His father, the bronze smith of the village, was a grim, unspeaking man, and since Dunny's six brothers were older than he by many years and went one by one from home to farm the land or sail the sea or work as smith in other towns of the northward vale, there was no one to bring the child up in tenderness. He grew wild, a thriving weed, a tall, quick boy, loud and proud and full of temper. With a few other children of the village, he herded goats on the steep meadows above the river springs, and when he was strong enough to push and pull the long bellows sleeves, his father made him work as smith's boy at a high cost in blows and whippings. There was not much work to be got out of Dunny. He was always off and away, roaming deep in the forest, swimming in the pools of the River Ar that, like all Gontish rivers, runs very quick and cold, or climbing by cliff and scarp to the heights above the forest, from which he could see the sea, that broad northern ocean where, past Paragal, no islands are. A sister of his dead mother lived in the village. She had done what was needful for him as a baby, but she had business of her own, and once he could look after himself at all, she paid no more heed to him. But one day, when the boy was 7 years old, untaught and knowing nothing of the arts and powers that are in the world, he heard his aunt crying out words to a goat which had jumped up onto the thatch of a hut and would not come down. But it came jumping when she cried a certain rhyme to it. Next day, herding the long-haired goats on the meadows of Highfall, Dunny shouted to them the words he had heard, not knowing their use or meaning or what kind of words they were. Nath hier Melchman, Hilchan Mirthan. He yelled the rhyme aloud, and the goats came to him. They came very quickly, all of them together, not making any sound. They looked at him out of the dark slot in their yellow eyes. Yeah, all right.
Story time with Brad. Very well read, Brad.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, that's fun. I could see reading that. It's got a fable-like quality to it. You can already see all of the kind of conventional, and this is not to downplay it because these are the stories everybody's always telling. Has a very conventional sort of hero's journey kind of thing going, right? Just sort of special child in some ways. And yeah, yeah. But the world building, what we call world building now, is all very deftly done here. It's engaging, but not overwrought. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, fun. Very cool. Yeah. We're gonna hear from Brad a little more too as we go. We're gonna do probably 2 or 3 more of those. All right.
Cool.
So one of the revolutionary aspects of Wizard of Earthsea was Le Guin's decision to feature a dark-skinned protagonist, challenging the white archetype of fantasy literature at the time. She once explained, most people in the world aren't white. Why should they be in Earthsea? And that is true.
That's a good point.
White folks are the global minority.
Yeah. Yeah.
For what it's worth.
Right.
I was reading that there are like 1 million people with red hair and blue eyes. Like, then it's
That's
Irish.
It?
That's it.
Wow.
Like, it's
okay.
So, I mean, okay. Yeah. I mean, it is what it is, and she's right. So there you go. This subversion of fantasy conventions, along with the novel's focus on balance and the Taoist principle of equilibrium, made it a seminal work in the genre. She was serious about Taoism. She would translate the Tao Te Ching at one point. Like, she was that level of serious about it. She was very interested. I think they grew up in kind of a secular household. I don't think there was I don't think they were going to mass on Sundays.
No, I didn't. No, I would think so. Yeah.
Let me just double check because I always like to get that right, and I hate to get it wrong. Le Guin once said she was raised as irreligious as a jackrabbit. She expressed a deep interest in Taoism and Buddhism, saying that Taoism gave her a handle on how to look at life during her adolescent years. So she was raised
fair enough
in a non-religious household. Okay, fine. The Earthsea series continued with the Tombs of Atuan and The Farthest Shore, 71 and 72, each exploring new facets of the world and its characters. Just roll a joint, put on some Led Zeppelin. Your girl's coming over later.
Yeah. You're going to read a little bit of the Tombs of Atuan.
Love it. In the Tombs of Atuan, Le Guin shifts the focus to Tanar, a young priestess trapped in a labyrinthine religious order. Through Tanar's journey, Le Guin explores themes of identity, freedom, and the struggle for self-determination. The Farthest Shore, which deals with the cycle of life and death, solidified Earthsea as one of the most important fantasy series of the 20th century. So she made her career in fantasy, which is very interesting. Reflecting on Earthsea, she once said, I don't want to write about heroes conquering the world. I wanted to write, or I didn't want, I wanted to write about people learning to live in it. I didn't want to write about heroes conquering the world. I wanted to write about people learning to live in it. Very
Okay. Yeah.
interesting. All right.
Yeah.
Now we're going to get into The Left Hand of Darkness, which is the next book club book. I've read most of it now. And so we're jumping around a little bit in time. She was prolific. So
Yeah.
she gets Earthsea in 68, and then she does The Left Hand of Darkness in 69. So she's writing. These are not short novels either. These are not little novellas. These are like full-blown, fully realized novels. This woman could work.
Yeah.
Well, A Wizard of Earthsea was bringing her acclaim in the fantasy genre. Her 1969 novel, The Left Hand of Darkness, would change the landscape of science fiction forever. Set in the Hainish universe, The Left Hand of Darkness takes place on the planet Gethin, where the inhabitants are ambisexual, shifting between male and female genders throughout their life cycles. This radical concept allowed Le Guin to explore themes of gender identity and the fluidity of human nature in ways that had never before been seen in science fiction. Brad, can you pull up the PDF in the reading?
Yeah.
Yep. I will read from the first chapter of it, and then
Okay.
I want you to find the second chapter, because the way that the structure of the Left Hand of Darkness works is it goes back and forth between the narrative and then these like little like folkloric interludes
Yeah.
where you've got the primary narrative of what's happening to the narrator, um and then every alternating chapter, as far as I can tell, are these like wonderfully realized world building,
Hmm.
mythological or sort of sociological historical backgrounds in this world. It's
Yeah.
beautiful. It's
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
interesting. So I'm going to
Yeah.
read the beginning of chapter 1, and then you get ready to read chapter
I'm
2.
reading just the place inside the blizzard, right? Is that right?
Is that chapter 2, the place
I
inside the
think so.
blizzard?
Yeah.
Let me make
Yep.
sure. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Got it.
Yeah. So, and this has those chapter beginnings, much like well, anyway, from
Yeah.
the archives of Hain, and chapter 1 is called A Parade in Ehrenrang. From the archives of Hain, transcript of Ansible document 0101101934 Gethin, to the Stabile on Olul, report from Genli I, first mobile on Gethin, winter, Hainish cycle, 93, ecumenical year, 1490 to 97.
I
Whoa.
love it.
I love this shit. I'll make my report as if I told a story, for I was taught as a child on my homeworld that truth, capital T, is a matter of the imagination. The soundest fact may fail or prevail in the style of its telling, like that singular organic jewel of our seas, which grows brighter as one woman wears it, and, worn by another, dulls and goes to dust. Facts are no more solid, coherent, round, and real than pearls are, but both are sensitive. The story is not all mine, nor told by me alone. Indeed, I am not sure whose story it is. You can judge better. But it is all one, and if at moments the facts seem to alter with an altered voice, why then you can choose the fact you like best, yet none of them are false, and it is all one story. It starts on the 44th diurnal of the year 1491, which on the planet Winter in the nation Karhide was Odar Hahad Tua, or the 22nd day of the third month of spring in the year one. It is always the year one here. Only the dating of every past and future year changes each New Year's Day, as one counts backwards or forwards from the unitary now. So it was spring in the year one in Ehrenrang, capital city of Karhide, and I was in peril of my life and did not know it.
I like that.
Heat,
Yeah.
just slinging heat, just
Yeah.
like a generational voice of
Yeah.
science fiction.
Oh,
Brilliant.
that sentence, it is always, if you're thinking about like, I mean, we could discourse about like world building versus just writing, right? But that bit where she says, "What is it? It is always year one here," something like that. Like that just opens up all of these. Your brain is looking for ways to make sense of that, and in doing that is like populating this whole socio-political environment, right?
It's
It's brilliant.
brilliant. It's the kind of thing that
Yeah.
you would do in a philosophy class and go, okay,
Mhm.
now imagine a world in a society where it is always year one. How would you structure the calendar?
Right. Right. What is that? Yeah. 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 It's great. It's great.
Yeah, fantastic. All right,
Yeah.
and read
From
read. So chapter one brings you into the world. You've got this narrator who's a stranger in a strange land. He's on a foreign planet called Winter, where it's always cold. He is always cold. They are
mm-hmm.
not. They're fine.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
He's every room he's in. It's like every room is like 40 degrees. He's always
Yeah.
freezing. As a
Yeah.
Minnesotan, I can really,
Yeah.
yeah, it's very
Yeah.
relatable.
Well, and it's
And,
great because I remember in reading that it's so well done because that stands in as this metaphor for like alienation
mhm.
itself, right? Just this very tactile thing. I don't belong here. It's uncomfortable for me here. Yeah, it's so good. Yeah.
Yep. And then chapter two is this drops you right into this weird like thing. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So chapter two, the place inside the blizzard, and this is just telling you where this text is coming from. From a sound tape collection of the North Carhiddish Hearth Tales in the archives of the College of Historians in Erhinrang, narrator unknown, recorded during the reign of Arghavan VIII. About 200 years ago, in the Hearth of Shath, in the Paring storm border, there were two brothers who vowed Kemmering to each other. In those days, as now, full brothers were permitted to keep Kemmer until one of them should bear a child, but after that they must separate, so it was never permitted them to vow Kemmering for life. Yet this they had done. When a
Okay. Let
child
me
was...
let me hang on.
Go ahead.
Let me
Yeah.
just briefly explain. Kemmerer or like Kemmering is a period of a few days each month in which Gethenians develop sexual organs and sexual desire.
Hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
Right. Right.
So
So they're like in
they
heat, but voluntarily.
right, they become sexually male or female with no predisposition toward either, although which sex they adopt can depend on context and relationships. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
keep going.
Yeah. Yet this they had done. When a child was conceived, the Lord of Shath commanded them to break their vow and never meet in Kemmer again. On hearing this command, one of the two, the one who bore the child, despaired and would hear no comfort or console, and procuring poison, committed suicide. Then the people of the hearth rose up against the other brother and drove him out of hearth and domain, laying the shame of the suicide upon him. And since his own lord had exiled him and his story went before him, none would take him in. But after the 3 days' guesting, all sent him from their doors as an outlaw. So from place to place he went until he saw that there was no kindness left for him in his own land, and his crime would not be forgiven. And then there's an asterisk and a little kind of footnote. His transgression of the code controlling incest became a crime when seen as the cause of his brother's suicide. Um, Continuing on, he had not believed this would be so. Being a young man and unhardened, when he saw that it was so indeed, he returned over the land to Shath, and as an exile stood in the doorway of the outer hearth. This he said to his hearth fellows there, quote, I am without a face among men. I am not seen. I speak and am not heard. I come and am not welcomed. There is no place by the fire for me, nor food on the table for me, nor a bed made for me to lie in. Yet I still have my name. Getharin is my name. That name I lay on this hearth is a curse, and with it my shame. Keep that for me. Now nameless I will go seek my death. Then some of the hearthmen jumped up with shouts and tumult, intending to kill him, for murder is a lighter shadow on a house than suicide. He escaped them and ran northward over the land towards the ice, outrunning all who pursued him. They came back all chapfallen to Shath, but Gethrun went on, and after 2 days' journey, came to the Paring ice. Just stop there. So, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, cool.
it's good stuff.
What do
It's an
you?
adventure. It's a little adventure, and you can feel how kind
It's
of...
like a whole short story inside a novel,
Hmm. Hmm.
and it's doing all this business of like, as you say, of world building.
Hmm.
But it stands on its own as a piece of writing.
Right. It's also just
Uh,
fun and compelling and interesting, on its own as a piece of narrative, and it
mhm.
fills in the context of this world that she's brought you into as it goes. It's also one of the sort of structuring myths of that place at the same time. So, Yeah.
Right,
Yeah. It's
right, right.
cool.
What do you think about it as an author of prose, like on a sentence level? What's she
I mean,
doing?
it's yeah. I mean, this is really she's really in that sort of fable voice, and as you can imagine, as a writer, there are levels of resolution in which, at the closest one, you would be describing every physical and visual detail and every gesture and every word that everybody said, right? That's like the highest resolution. And then like the lowest resolution, the zoomed the most out, you're telling a story thousands of years long in a few sentences, right? It's like the dinosaurs came out of the swamps and were blown away by the meteor, right? And in between that, there's obviously all these different places you can pick. And she picked the one, and she did this in Wizard of Earthsea too. That is, or the part of Wizard of Earthsea that we read, that is most akin to how fables and, frankly, how children's stories are told. It has, and that's not to denigrate it at all. It's a particular register, and it's really good. It gives you all the details you sort of need to know, but is very open to imaginative interpretation, right? We don't know what Gethrin looks like, really. We don't know what these places he looks like are, really, but we understand the stakes, and we get a sense of what the allowances and constraints of his world are. And those kinds of stories last. I mean, they just do. That's how it's the same register story fairy tales are told in. It's the same register a lot of religious stories are told in. Not to say that those are necessarily created stories, but you have to pick your frequency when you're telling a story, and that's the frequency she has chosen in some of these stuff that we've read so far.
Totally. Yeah, and
Yeah.
great succinct analysis, Brad. You could
Yeah.
teach in a just and right world. You'd be teaching and being paid handsomely to teach a seminar, but
Well,
instead
yeah.
instead we're going to beg for your Patreon dollar, patreon.com slash
Right.
art of dark pod, substack.com slash at art of dark pod. You get the same thing whether you subscribe to Patreon or Substack. They pretty
Yeah.
much all the bonus content ends up on both feeds. So whatever, pick your
Mhm.
poison. Seriously though, if you value the insights, support the pod. All right.
Yeah.
Let me get back into the outline. Fun. Le Guin describe. Oh, wait. No, I've got something from the last interview here. I've got to pay some
Oh,
pages I
cool.
want to read. Okay.
I am
Uh,
enjoying her. I am enjoying these interviews with her. She's got this like she's clearly a smart person, but she doesn't speak with all this like erudition. She'll be like, yeah, or whatever. Or I heard her say the word
yeah.
cool in there.
Well,
Like
she's from
she's
Cal.
not
She's a Californian.
right. Yeah, exactly. I kind of dig it. Yeah.
We're all Californians now.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
I
true.
mean, yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, The Left Hand of Darkness, which won both the Hugo and Nebula Science Fiction Awards. Okay, so she's like
Those are big.
arrived. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is set in another galaxy, but it is about two very human problems, betrayal and fidelity. When asked once what the most constant theme in her novels was, she replied without stopping to think twice, marriage. The book
Mhm.
grew out of Le Guin's increasing involvement in feminism. Along about 1967, I began to feel a certain unease, a need to step on a little farther, perhaps, on my own, she wrote in her essay, Is Gender Necessary? I began to want to define and understand the meaning of sexuality and the meaning of gender in my life and in our society. Much had been gathered in the unconscious, both personal and collective, which must either be brought up into consciousness or else turn destructive. It was the same need, I think, that had led Beauvoir to write The Second Sex and Friedan to write The Feminine Mystique. And that was at the same time leading Kate Millett and others to write their books and to create the new feminism. But I was not a theoretician, a political thinker, or an activist, or a sociologist. I was and am a fiction writer. The way I did my thinking was to write a novel. That novel, The Left Hand of Darkness, is the record of my consciousness, the process of my thinking. At the center of her thinking, the question became, what would a planet be like if it didn't have any wars? How would the people differ from us? And this happens in The Left Hand of Darkness. It never rises to their conflicts are always they'll assassinate you,
Yeah.
there'll be intrigue within the house, but it
Mhm.
never escalates to the level of war. Okay.
Right. Right.
What would they have or lack? Over time, she began to realize that the people of her book would be neither male nor female, but both. Thus, the Gathenians were born, sexual androgynes, bisexuals, sexual possibles. It was their day yesterday. Yeah. Once a month, like other animals, they enter into a kind of heat when their bodies change and polarize, become male or female. No one knows which he, she will be. If conception occurs, the female remains female and bears a child. If not, she returns to androgyny. The mother of one child could be the father of several others. Le Guin says she never really knew whether that this was actually physiologically possible in humans until she gave the completed manuscript to her pediatrician, a Frenchman, to read. It is perfectly possible, he told her, but it is disgusting. let me read this again one more time. Le Guin says she never really knew whether this was actually physiologically possible in humans until she gave the completed manuscript to her pediatrician, the most French man of all time, to read. It is perfectly possible, he told her, but it is disgusting.
Dégoûtant.
Dégoûting. Yeah, but that is really funny, dude. There is no rape on Gethin, no division of labor between weak women and strong men, and since at any time one may bear and raise a child, no males quite so free as males elsewhere. There are also no wars. There are skirmishes, raids, quarrels over territory, but no huge troop movements over continents. A pregnant person does not a general make. The hero of the book, a person from Earth, is very uncomfortable with this arrangement. And it is. But it is disgusting. He's just like me for real. And it is his gradual, painful discovery of love between equals that forms the book's heart. Le Guin has been criticized for using a male hero, but she has an explanation. I knew a woman would just love it. There wouldn't be any dramatic scenes. She would just settle right down. I needed this guy who hated it, who was uncomfortable and miserable in it. It's true, a woman wouldn't have done. She would have just run around saying, "Oh, this is wonderful." Le Guin's like, I needed a chud to narrate my story.
Right. The perennial chud.
Yeah. The eternal chud.
Well, I love the idea too that like, okay, so Le Guin writes this, and you can come away with this from this book with different perspectives on, whether her thought experiment works out or whatever. But like, I love that she writes this crazy sort of gender bending, really sort of sophisticated and at least unique dive into what gender even is. And the criticisms are like, but why does it have to be about a man? And it's like, dude, are you like her enterprise is like radically has a radical perspective on gender, and it's still not good enough.
They really did lose their goddamn minds there in the middle. They were, I can understand though. I mean, they're coming off of centuries of oppression, feeling oppressed, rightly, and really overcompensating. Just going, no, chop their dicks off. Fuck them.
Right.
All right. Le Guin did not know all this when she began the novel. For her, it started with a vision of two people pulling something across a lot of snow, and much of its content was told to her by the characters as she went along. Ooh, I like it.
Mm-hmm.
Once she discovered something about them, she would go back over the novel, changing pieces here and there. The first time I ever went to a meeting where they discussed any of my books academically, she chuckled, a Canadian scholar was going to discuss The Left Hand of Darkness. He didn't know that I was going to be there. When I walked in, he was appalled. He looked at me with a savage look in his face and said, "Just don't tell me you didn't know what you were doing." That's a basic thing, actually, between scholars and artists. I think, oh, is that what I was doing? Or is that why I did it? And it's very revealing. But the fact is, you cannot know that while you're doing it. The dancer can't think. Now I'm going to take a step to the left. That ain't the way you dance.
Mm-hmm. I like that.
And this author is talking about a dinner and everything, and then there's a little bit of a poem that she read at the end of their dinner. This was the Le Guins and I met downtown on the evening of August 6th. I don't know what year it is, but near the Women's Park for an artist program in memory of the bombing of Hiroshima the night before. Of course, she's hanging out with Oppenheimer as a kid, and now she's memorializing Hiroshima. The night before, 200 people had painted 2,000 shadows on the sidewalks of Portland, outlines, one of a man playing with a cat as reminders of the way radiation from the Hiroshima bomb burned the forms of its victims onto the sides of buildings. Le Guin read a poem toward the end of the evening's program. Just want to get a little of her poetry in here.
Yeah.
We lived forever until 1945. Children have time to make mistakes, margin for error. Carthage could be destroyed and sown with salt. Everything was always, it would be all right. Then we turned, so technically sweet the turning, the light on. In the desert of that dividing light, we saw the writing on the walls of the world.